I've never understood the obsession with really hard games. For years, I had friends that praised games like Dark Souls, where your amount of deaths was almost a point of pride, and the idea of fighting a boss in Sekiro for weeks on end wasn't as frustrating as it was expected. So when I heard about Elden Ring back in 2022, I didn't think it would be my type of game for a single second. But when a game takes over the entire industry like Elden Ring did, sometimes you can't fight it. So I gave in. I made a character, and to my surprise, I discovered one of the greatest gaming experiences of my entire life. I'm Eric, welcome to Utini, and today we're going to see how Elden Ring changed the way that I look at games forever. Elden Ring is back. This week, the game's first and only DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, releases and promises to finish the story of Elden Ring that started almost 2 years ago. Now, in an industry where games are often judged on their ability to keep an audience engaged for years and years with multiple patches and DLCs over time, you may think that a game essentially going quiet for 2 years would kill any sense of hype for new content. But for Elden Ring, it just created more hype. Back in 2022, Elden Ring took the gaming world by storm. This Souls-like fantasy epic instantly became the fastest-selling game in Bandai Namco's history, was the second best-selling game of the entire year, only behind Call of Duty and Modern Warfare 2, and ended up being one of the most awarded games in history, with 324 Game of the Year awards, including the top prize at the Game Awards. Essentially, the Oscars for video games nowadays. All that to say, it was a pretty big deal. Now, was that surprising? Well, not particularly. So-called Souls games, where the game emphasizes a high difficulty alongside environmental storytelling, have been increasing in popularity ever since Demon's Souls was released all the way back in 2009. The modern gaming era has also brought these games to the forefront with the explosion of streaming popularity, because A, it's really fun to see people succeed at really hard things, and B, it's even more fun to see people fail over and over and over and over at really hard things. Oh, and C, the emergence of playing these games in the most absurd circumstances you can imagine. You know what? We'll get to that later. Overall, Elden Ring was set up for success in all kinds of ways before its release. And the final guarantee was the fact that they brought in none other than George R.R. Martin, the godfather of Game of Thrones, to help write the lore for this brand new world. Because after all, when you're pitching a brand new universe, it doesn't hurt to have possibly the most famous fantasy writer of the modern day in your corner while you do so. But even with all of these advantages in place before release and the amazing sales figures afterwards, there's still a very important question to ask. Why was this game so different? How did Elden Ring somehow get through all of the defenses gamers like me put up to fend off these games that were too hard or too inaccessible to create something that has us this excited for a new chapter after all this time? And if you're still waiting on the right time to give it a shot, why is this the moment for you? Well, that's the easy part. It's because Elden Ring delivers the perfect combination of unparalleled gameplay, genre-defying design, and shockingly, one of the most supportive communities in all of gaming. All right, let's get one very obvious thing out of the way and one not so obvious thing out of the way. The first being this: Elden Ring is fun, plain and simple. The game is just a blast to play. But secondly, and this may fly in the face of every thought you've ever had about these types of games, Elden Ring is wildly accessible. See, before Elden Ring, most of the Souls games in the genre were relatively linear. Essentially, you go from point A to point B, and although the game may trick you into thinking that you have an element of choice from time to time, there is a very definite path to get to the next part of the game. Now, for games that are famously difficult, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and the like, this can be an issue, because what if you find a boss you simply can't beat? Or an area that becomes so frustrating that it defeats all the love you may have started with? Well, you probably quit. And I'm not speaking in hypothetical terms here. That literally happened to me, both with Bloodborne and Sekiro. I tried them after playing Elden Ring, and I was shocked at how defeated I became when a game I had really loved at the start just grinded to a halt at a certain section. But Elden Ring changed all that by becoming the first true open-world game in the Souls genre, and allowing you, as a player, actual freedom to choose your own path. Now, a lot of games may boast about an open world without really meaning it, but Elden Ring absolutely puts its money where its mouth is. There are landmarks surrounding the massive map, yes, but from the opening moments of the game, you're allowed, and even encouraged, to explore and find enemies at your own pace. Did you stumble into an area full of enemies that make you want to throw the controller? That's fine. Go somewhere else. Find easier enemies, get stronger, then double back. The gameplay loop almost forces you into unintentional discovery, so you really feel in control of your own progression. Now, is the game still hard? Well, sure, absolutely. But between the vast amount of biomes and the prevalence of different loot and a literal horse you get to summon and ride to get out of bad situations or just traverse the terrain, you're never stuck in the same way you may fear in an older Souls game. You know, there's always something new to try, and when you come back stronger and are able to conquer those beasts that gave you such trouble in the first place, the gratification is amazing. But hey, none of that accessibility would really mean as much if the game wasn't fun to play, right? Okay, yeah, let's get back to that real quick, because oh my god, this game is so viscerally enjoyable. Within Elden Ring, before the DLC release, there are 308 different weapons and 171 individual incantations and sorceries that you can equip. So if I've done my math right, there are roughly a billion ways to play this game based on your individual style, and they all feel so good. If you want to run around with a giant sword, the hits feel crunchy and hard. If you want to cast spells of fire or ice or crystal, every strike feels impactful and epic. And if you want to dart around like the wind itself, you feel like nothing can touch you. Now, all of these different playstyles feeling equally fun and viable in the game world come down to the skill of the designers and the developers, and their work, it's jaw-dropping. As opposed to Skyrim, where, let's face it, you're supposed to be a stealth archer. Don't lie to yourself, we all did it. Elden Ring actively encourages experimentation and alteration based purely on the volume of items that you find along your journey. You're constantly swapping out equipment to maximize your stats and increase your damage. You're adding new abilities based on what feels right or what's most effective to get you past the next area. And the result is an experience in which you keep working to perfect the exact type of character you want to play. You're not being dictated to by an invisible developer. You're making the choice based on what's fun and what you're good at. And every possible path is designed with care and intentionality. And so is the world itself. When you play a game like Elden Ring, it's not uncommon to put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into your playthroughs. With practically endless amounts of secrets to find, challenges to conquer, and enemies to slay, Elden Ring's world, the lands between, can become like a second home after a while. And when a fictional landscape occupies that much of your time, you better ensure that you enjoy not only the gameplay, but also the literal construction of the world itself. Thankfully, Elden Ring earned the Game Award for Best Art Direction for a reason. This game is, pre-DLC, made up of 9 different regions, and they all have vastly different vibes. Every area is littered with unique geography, different enemy types, and a host of environmental hazards that make each region entirely separate from those that surround it. And what makes each of these areas especially sensational is that every piece of every place is designed with intention and meaning behind it. Now, it's here that, for only the second time in this video, I'll mention the lore of Elden Ring. It's complex, it's vast, and it is best summarized by experts who have dedicated their lives, and thankfully, their YouTube channels, to the analyzation and expansion of every piece of detail that Elden Ring provides. The king of this realm is VaatiVidya, who puts out the best lore videos on Elden Ring that I've ever seen, and also has a voice that is roughly 1,000,000 times better than my own. After this video, go check him out. You won't be sorry. But why I mention the lore here is because the lore is the foundation of the design of Elden Ring in every way. Every biome, every structure, every enemy, and every weapon in the game has been designed in accordance with the lore of the world's history. And while you don't necessarily need to know any of this backstory to enjoy the game to the fullest, it's obvious that this attention to detail in every facet of the game's design allowed the creators of Elden Ring to stay coherent in every step of the process. The results are magical. Because yes, the world of Elden Ring is a mystery that doesn't hold your hand in any way. But with every discovery of a new area or a new character or even a new weapon description, you are welcomed into larger parts of the story. And by having this roadmap available to them during the design process, the studio was able to ensure that no part of Elden Ring feels out of place or accidental. Every blade of grass, every brick of every citadel was placed with care and specificity. And when you care that much about every detail of the thing you're creating something beautiful is almost guaranteed. But I'll admit, that level of detail can get pretty intimidating from a player's point of view. And again, you don't need to know everything about the Lands Between to have a blast for hundreds of hours in Elden Ring. But if you want to know everything about the lore, how to enhance your playthrough, or you want to have the best chance at maximizing your experience to the fullest, well, you're in luck. Because you'll also have access to the most supportive gaming community that I have ever seen. Getting into my first Souls game was intimidating for all the reasons I've already said. I knew this wasn't really my genre, I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough, but I just couldn't ignore the praise that Elden Ring was receiving everywhere I looked. So I made a decision that I really wanted to play the game the right way. Now, obviously, I know now how customizable the game is, but at the start, I just wanted to make sure that I was giving myself every advantage that I could. And that's where I discovered the Souls-like community for the first time. Your first big decision in Elden Ring comes in the form of creating your character. You need to pick a class that will define what weapons and stats will accompany you at the start of the game, and I knew that this decision was going to have a massive impact on whether or not I'd stick with it. So, I asked the question. I went on YouTube and I looked at beginner player guides, and I was amazed at what I found. There were so many videos. All kinds of tips on what's the easiest for new players, what lore would be helpful for me to know at the top, which literal direction to go at the beginning. It's south, by the way. And even beyond the advice itself, I was shocked at the tone of every video and comment. They seemed to earnestly welcome new players and want us to succeed. Like, sure, there were people who prided themselves on never dying or sticking to one weapon the whole game, but these were veteran challenges to be lauded, not expectations for newbies just trying to figure out what was going on. And this feeling of acceptance and aid continued throughout my entire time playing Elden Ring. No matter where I was in the game, I never felt an ounce of shame asking a question or looking up strategy guides. Was there a boss I couldn't beat? I could ask. Was there a dungeon I couldn't navigate? I could ask. Did I want to figure out what in the world was going on with the Rainy questline? I could most definitely ask. Not only did this sense of total openness from the community assist me in progressing through the Lands Between, it also started to break down a mental barrier I didn't know I had. You know, as a kid, I would buy the Prima strategy guides and let them walk me through some of my favorite games, and I didn't think twice about that making me less of a gamer. But somehow in the years since, that judgment had started to fester. Like how many games had I quit because I was too proud to ask for help? How many experiences had I missed out on? Yet here was the game of the year actively encouraging me to do so. So, I accepted with open arms. Now, one more fantastic thing about Elden Ring's community is that it's also literally found in-game. By using in-game items, you can actively welcome other players into your own game world to help you fight a particular challenging boss, or just play alongside you for hours on end. And if you find a hidden treasure or a new strategy, you can jot down a little note that will be accessible by tons of other players in their own respective worlds. Think of it like paying it forward in a virtual space. And the best part about all this community involvement, it's completely optional. And much like everything else in Elden Ring, it's customizable to however you want to play the game. Do you want to play the entire game by yourself? You can do that. Do you want to read every single community note? You can do that too. The only goal of the Elden Ring community is to continuously have fun playing Elden Ring. Some folks have fun by swinging a big sword at a big guy in a big field. Some folks have fun knowing that the big guy is General Radahn, using his mastery of gravitational magic to ride a tiny horse after years of rot broke his fragile mind. And some folks have fun in more eccentric ways. Remember earlier in the video how I mentioned some absurd circumstances? Well, for a game that is based around difficulty and challenge, Elden Ring has spawned some of the wildest community engagement that I've ever seen. You have people playing the game with controllers that are buttons mapped onto bananas. You have people playing by using a saxophone as a controller. And you even have people playing 2 games simultaneously while using a Dance Dance Revolution dance pad. Now, why do they do this crazy stuff? Well, obviously they want to add more challenge to the game they've mastered, and they want to get noticed by viewers, but additionally, they just want to have fun. For a game that at its surface can be so intimidating for so many people, Elden Ring has somehow created a community that is more fun, more uplifting, and more helpful than any new player can probably imagine. I know I couldn't. Elden Ring is very hard. No matter how much you think you'll die as you play this game, you'll probably die more. I don't want to lie to you. But I also want to tell you that somehow it doesn't matter. Because when a game looks this good, plays this good, and makes you feel this good, it's hard not to see what fans of the genre have been praising for so many years. And the final cherry on top? From Software has said that this upcoming DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, will be the first and last DLC the game ever receives. There's no microtransactions, there's no season pass. What you see is what you get, and what you get can be customized and accessed in whatever way you want. So, if you haven't taken the plunge into Elden Ring yet, maybe this is the perfect time to do it. Get the bundle, make a character, and see what all the fuss is about. I mean, I think it's time for me to jump back in myself. But hey, good luck out there. Watch your stamina. And as always, may the Force be with you.